What is up, Buff Nation? Welcome on in to the Sko Show as 2025 is here. Still a long way to go until we get back to seeing the Colorado Buffaloes on the football field, but roster building time, transfer portal season, skill position competition galore for the Colorado Buffaloes as we get ready for year 3 already of the coach primary. I was thinking about that the other day. Aniello, Piro, Chase Howell, presented by Peckish here on the Sko Show. How is this already the third year?
Don't let it go by too fast. I mean, technically, he was hired a little over 2 years ago,
But
so I
third
guess we've
season,
been dealing.
you know.
Yeah, we're going into the third season. As long as he doesn't get nagged by some NFL team, I guess. But we'll see about
That ain't
that.
happening.
That ain't happening.
Shout out to the Raiders, not getting that number 1 overall pick. That was the only team that I was concerned about that if he did make the jump. But I saw a clip or an audio bite from Joel Klatt who was talking about, it makes a great point. Coach Prime can't be Coach Prime at the NFL level. Like with all like the pop and the sizzle and the fanfare, like he's built for college football if he wants to be a coach. And if you watched episode 1 of the Coach Prime show on Amazon Prime, he talked about how there's a 99 to 100% chance that this last year was the last time that he'd be coaching his kids. So he leaves Coach Prime never wants to talk in absolutes, but he's going to stay here in Colorado. I know he's got a pretty sweet contract offer in front of him as well. So we'll see when the ink dries there.
Yeah, we'll wait for that ink to dry, and then I think we'll all breathe a nice sigh of relief that we'll know that he's here for at least the next year. Hopefully the next few years.
Hopefully for the long haul for sure. But make sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button right here on your Mile High Sports YouTube channel. That way you guys never, ever miss an episode of the Sko Show and all the incredible content we've got on the channel. We've got the Broncos doing their thing. We've got the Nuggets trying to figure it out. The Avalanche on a little bit of a resurgence as well. So we've got you covered from head to toe with all of your Colorado sports coverage. But today, we're going to take a look at the offense. We're going to take a look at some of the guys that they brought in. We're going to take a look at some of the guys that have departed, who's going to step up, and we're going to take a look at the overall dynamic of this CU Buffs offense with a couple of big guys gone in Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders, the two best players on the roster, but in comes Caden Salter, in comes Julian Lewis, couple of receivers, the running back room, the offensive line. We're going to break it all down. So why don't we start with the quarterbacks? And we've done full videos on both of the guys in Caden Salter and Julian Lewis. So check that out on the Mile High Sports YouTube channel if you kind of want some in-depth analysis and thoughts on who those guys may be for Coach Prime and Pat Shurmur moving forward next year. But a word that is dreaded in the NFL but is welcomed in college football, quarterback competition. That is what we're going to see here with the Colorado Buffaloes over the next few months in regards to who's going to be QB1.
Okay, AP. So I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm riding in an Uber. I'm heading to the airport, and I start talking with this Uber driver. I was actually wearing some Notre Dame stuff. It was the day of the Notre Dame Georgia game. This Uber driver is like, "Hey, I don't know if I can let you in the car. I'm a big Georgia fan." I'm like, "Well, you're gonna have to let me in the car." Obviously, I get in there and we start talking college football. He played college football with Jamie Chadwell, the head coach at Liberty. And so obviously we start getting in this conversation about Caden Salter. And he told me a story about him texting with Jamie and asking him about what makes Caden Salter so great. And Coach Chadwell talked about how he has all the intangibles and he has a will to win and a will to be great. And I think what happened to me in that Uber is I realized the chances of Julian Lewis being the week 1 starter for the CU Buffs, I would put at no higher than 10%. I think Caden Salter is going to be the guy. We've seen the production that he's already had at Liberty, one of the top quarterbacks. I think his experience, and I think the fact that Pat Shurmur pretty much targeted him the whole way. They didn't really look at another quarterback in the transfer portal. They went after Caden Salter. He wanted to be here. He brought his brother along here with him. And I just think he is so much further along in his experience playing college football than Julian Lewis that Julian's going to have a major uphill climb if he wants to beat Caden out for the starting job. And that's no negative against Julian Lewis. I think he's going to be a great quarterback.
Chase.
But
he was born in 2007.
Dude, that's crazy. 2007. I was probably already kissing girls by 2007. But I think it might benefit him the most if he sits behind a guy like Caden Salter and he learns from him for 1 year. So it was pencil, Caden Salter. That ink is getting a little bit thicker.
Yeah, and here's a quote from Caden Salter on the situation with the quarterback room. He says, quote, "No promises, all competition, and I'm willing to come in and compete. You know, Julian Lewis, he's a younger guy, of course, so they wanted somebody in the room that can mentor him and help him come into college and feel comfortable. They felt I was that guy that could do that. I also feel like I'm the guy that can do that." So you also like the mentality from a guy like Caden Salter that kind of understands, yeah, we're here to win, we're here to compete. I want to be QB1 for Colorado, but I'm also going to be able to, teach this guy and Julian Lewis, again, 17-year-old Julian Lewis, what it's like to be a college football quarterback at the power level, even though, Caden Salter's coming from Liberty, but a Beverly, that's not a real word. Bevy. That's what I was trying to say, of experience. But the other thing is, real quick on Julian Lewis, like who's like, I'm trying to think, like, who are some true freshman quarterbacks that have come in recent memory that have just excelled right away? Like, there's a significant learning curve when it comes to being an elite high school prospect and coming to the collegiate level and playing with these big boys right away.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of redshirt freshmen be very
Yeah.
successful after their redshirt year, but there's been few and far between, and even some of them that were successful. Like my mind went to JT Daniels, who was pretty successful as a true freshman at USC, and then he kind of just petered out after that. So maybe it was too much too fast for some of those guys. But yeah, it's rare to have a true freshman come in and really, really succeed at this level. And I think it could benefit him to sit behind Caden Salter for a year.
Yeah, and here's another quote from Salter on Juju. He says, "I met Juju at the Elite 11 when I was an Elite 11 counselor. So I've met Juju before and just recently met him again when I went out there for the bowl game. He's a very cool dude and he's a playmaker, one of the best quarterbacks in his class." So obviously, players speak to a certain extent.
Yeah, but he sounds like a leader the way that he talks,
which is what you're going to need, because like Shedeur Sanders, I don't know how I would describe Shedeur as a leader. Like Shedeur almost kind of felt to me like a shield, where you saw how bruised and battered he was in that Alamo Bowl game and really how bruised and battered he was over the course of his career in Colorado. And I think Shedeur's leadership was evoked by his toughness, where I think Caden Salter is going to be able to bring some of that as well. But he's also kind of got that leader type of mindset coming in here at Colorado to be like, hey, I'm going to do my part. Everybody else needs to do theirs. And if we can do that together, we're going to be able to accomplish everything we want to accomplish on the football field.
Yeah, a little bit more of a vocal leader than a leader by example. I think Shedeur is no doubt a leader, but I don't know how much I think it sounds like Caden Salter knows more of the right things to say at the right times.
What am I saying? Shedeur, Travis, neither one of those is what I'm trying to say. Caden Salter is like a quote unquote traditional type of leader, is kind of how I would look at it, right? Like says the right things, acts the right way. So that is going to be exciting. But yeah, the expectation is that Caden Salter will be QB1, bearing anything significant, injury, whatever it might be. And Julian Lewis is going to be the apprentice in waiting moving forward here for the Colorado Buffaloes. But obviously that's the most important position, but the quarterback is only as good as his skill position players and his offensive line. And boy, oh boy, does Colorado have some good players at those positions.
They got some great players coming back. So we'll go through. I think our boy DB is going to build us a nice graphic on these projected starters, but running back Isaiah Augustov, I think he's pretty much
a real running back.
I think can he become a real running back DB?
I know
so. You don't have a mic back there, but
he's shaking his head.
I think with a great offensive line, or even a good offensive line that is able to open up some holes, I think we can see a really good Isaiah Augustov in 2025. We saw him break out a little bit. He was by far, I think, the best running back of the trio this past year. So I'll go ahead and put him in as the starter.
Yeah, I would agree. And it looks like Drelon Hayden's going to be back as well. I know there was some speculation that he might enter into the transfer portal. I don't really know where that speculation came from. Maybe the fact that he played at Ohio State and didn't get much run here at Colorado, but it looks like he's going to be here to stay as well. And again, the word of the day, competition. Like nothing is set in stone. I think Isaiah Augustov, you can project to be running back one, but we also saw Colorado take a pretty significant running back by committee approach last year.
Yeah, and I think they'll continue to do that. And I think we'll see a lot of Michael Welch as well. Drelon Hayden, Michael Welch, Isaiah Augustov. You bring back all three running backs that got the bulk of the carries this past year. So I think that's a good thing. And yeah, it probably would have been nice to see them go after one in the transfer portal, but sounds like they might have just been asking for a little bit too much money. So they'll return all three running backs. I think we'll see them all be much improved, especially with a better offensive line. If we can go ahead and assume that the offensive line will be improved. Let's move on to wide receiver. if you watched our transfer portal video, we talked a lot about Joseph Williams.
Yep.
I think you can go ahead and put him in as a starter. He has 3 years, but no, yeah, 3 years of eligibility left. So a guy that's still pretty young for college football, but I think you can go ahead and say that Joseph Williams will be the starter. I think Omarion Miller, we heard some rumors that he was back practicing with the team after his broken leg, so it's already good. It's good to hear that he's back practicing, especially if he's full go during spring ball. I think Omarion Miller is surefire starter for this team. He has been so impressive every time he touched the field the last couple of years. Obviously had that dramatic injury this past year, but every time he was out there on the field, it seemed like he was able to make plays. And I think Omarion Miller is a guy that we can have high expectations for going into this year. The other wide receiver we got to mention is probably Drelon Miller, just a slot guy that I can't wait to see what Pat Shermer is able to do with him.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, what's the Kendrick song? You know, Meet the Grahams is Meet the Millers. You got Drelon and Omari on the outside, one in the slot, of course.
Miller time
for the Colorado Buffaloes. So, yeah, it is Miller time for sure up there in Colorado. And I think back to, you know, you talked about Omarion real quick. 2 years ago, when you still had Travis, you had Jimmy Horn. I'm forgetting there was another guy. Who's the guy who went to the
Xavier Weaver?
Yeah, Xavier Weaver. Forgetting that off the top of my head. You had Michael Irvin. One game, I think it was a home game. I forget exactly who the opponent was.
Probably USC.
I think you're right. Putting his arm around, you know, the playmaker is Michael Irvin's nickname. Putting his arm around Omarion Miller, talking him up, gassing him up, talking about you're this, you're that, you're the truth. And now, yes, the injury kind of derailed his 2024 season, but you're expecting big things from Omarion Miller to kind of step up. And Drelon Miller, too, who really came on for Colorado late in the year.
Yeah, I think you can be excited about both those guys. Joseph Williams, I think they have some serious weapons at the wide receiver position. The one that I want to mention, because when we have talked about Colorado the last couple of years, we've talked about 4 starting wide receivers, which is what the look that they've given most defenses. I think the hope is next year they might try to run the football a little bit more, so we might see a little bit more of the tight end position. But if we're talking a 4th wide receiver and we're talking about the slot position, I think we got to talk about Quentin Gibson. He was just named the Max Preps Player of the Year in high school football. They only gave him 3 stars on all these recruiting sites, and then they give him Player of the Year nationally on Max Prep. So he had almost 40 touchdowns during his senior year. His team won the Texas High School State Championship. I think they got a serious playmaker in Quentin Gibson, so they're going to find a way to get the ball in his hands.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, the one thing we know is Colorado's going to have those premium players at those skill positions, whether it's wide receiver, talking a little about running back as well. And I'm excited about tight end too. I'm like I said, I'm a throwback football guy. I like running the ball, but I think tight ends, like the most, like when you have a great tight end or a couple of great tight ends, I feel like that can just elevate your offense because of the versatility of the position. A guy that can block, a guy that can receive, big body type of guy as well. So I think that's exciting. So real quick, before we dive into some of these other positions, let me tell you about our friends over at Peckish. Elite chicken wings and pizza here in Colorado. 2 locations, one up on the hill in Boulder. So if you're going up to a basketball game or a football game, or maybe you're thinking about going to the University of Colorado, or you're thinking about sending your kid to the University of Colorado, make sure to check out our friends over at Peckish, guys. And for all of our Denver Metro Buff fans, their brand new location off of I-25 and Bellevue. So 2 locations to get your chicken wing and pizza fix, and it is absolutely phenomenal, my friend.
The best wings in town. There's no doubt about it. I don't think anybody can put a wing in front of me and it'd be better than that honey garlic buffalo wing.
I dream about it.
There's just no chance that there's a better wing out there than the honey garlic buffalo wing. And I can't wait to have it again.
Yeah, you and me both. So check out our friends over at Peckish. Again, 2 locations across Colorado, I-25 and Bellevue in Denver, or in the Denver Metro rather, and then up in Boulder on the hill. But okay, let's talk about the tight end position here as Colorado works to kind of build out this offense.
So they go into the transfer portal. They get a guy in Zach Atkins, who has played D2 football, I believe, over the past couple of years. A school that probably nobody, unless they live in a certain area of Missouri, would probably recognize. But a guy that was highly sought after in the transfer portal, had plenty of Power 4 offers. He kind of a do-it-all tight end, and I think we might see some two tight end sets next year. Maybe that's just hopeless. Wishful thinking. Maybe that's just wishful thinking.
I like 2 tight.
We might see some 2 tight end sets.
Big fan.
You bring back a guy in Savell Smalls, who was pretty much the only tight end that they played over this past season. So they got Atkins, Savell Smalls, Sam Hart, who transferred from Ohio State. might be a little bit healthier next year. So you might have some tight ends you're able to deploy. I'll go ahead and put Zach Atkins as the starter here. It might be Savell Smalls, but hopefully we see both of them because I want to see a little bit more tight end action next year.
Yeah, and that's where I'm curious as to how Colorado is going to approach next season on offense. Is you were able to rely on Travis and Shedeur to kind of play that two-man game with Jimmy Horn Jr. on the outside as well. So how do they kind of reinvent themselves offensively with a dual threat quarterback? Not to just go back to Caden Salter, but I think that's also going to be able to alter the way in which Colorado plays offense.
Yeah, and I think when you have a running quarterback like that and you're running a lot more RPO and option type of plays to utilize his legs, I think you do need to throw a tight end in there a little bit more often to get in there and block. So I'm expecting to see more at the tight end position.
Yeah, you and me both. And then, frankly, you know, to use kind of a sandwich analogy, right? We've talked about the deli meat, we've talked about the lettuce and the tomato and the pickles. None of this happens without your bread, which is the offensive line.
The offensive line. Well, left tackle, we can obviously go ahead and start there. Jordan Seaton,
77, baby.
Maybe the best left tackle in all of college football next year. We'll see. But I think he showed enough during his true freshman year that this dude is going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. So left tackle, Jordan Seaton. We might as well keep moving along that offensive line. Sounds like Tyler Brown's going to be back. So I went ahead and put him at left guard. Adam Munster Tiger at Buff Stampede. He posts a eligibility chart. He does it probably once a month, especially in the off season, reminding us about all the different talent on this roster. So go ahead and check that out. But he currently has Tyler Brown as a graduate senior. So I'm going to put him at left guard. Center sounds like we might have a little bit of a competition there. Cash Cleveland obviously showed a lot this past year. As a walk-on, he's likely going to end up getting a scholarship before next year. So you can say he might be the starter at center, but they bring in this guy from Louisiana Tech, Ryan McGill. Big body, 310 pounds. I think he could play all across the offensive line. You could even throw him in a guard position if you really like what you got from Cash Cleveland. So they'll have a little bit of competition at the center. You bring back a right guard in Kareem Harden, who played quite a bit over the last 2 years, and then they went out to Texas A&M and got Aki Ogunbayi. So I think those two guys will probably compete at the guard position. It sounds like you got 3 or 4 guys that they might be able to start at guard. And what we saw a lot during 2024 was they rotated these guards. They basically had 2 different waves of guards that would play with each other. So we might end up seeing 4 guys playing a lot at the guard position because that's what they did last year. And then sounds like the starting right tackle from this past year, who actually went out with an injury at the end of the season, Phillip Houston, will be back. So I went ahead and put him at right tackle. But AP, I think this is still a work in progress. We don't even know the offensive line coach. And I feel like whoever they end up getting at offensive line coach, he might want to bring in his own guys. He might have some guys from whatever school he ends up coming from. So offensive line still a work in progress, but that's what I got for right now.
Well, and look, offensive line, I think, is probably the hardest position group to address, not just in college football, but even the NFL, right? Like you think of the NFL, like offensive linemen rarely are signed as free agents. A lot of these guys get signed to big extensions in the middle of their careers or in the middle of their contracts just because of how valuable that position is and how hard it is to find sustainable talent at that position. So I agree with you. It is very much a work in progress, but I believe
it's where continuity is the most important. And you talk about continuity on the offensive line going into a season. And the way that I had written it out right here, with a couple of transfers that they brought in to come compete. But I got 5 guys here that have all played with each other already. Jordan Seaton, Tyler Brown, Cash Cleveland, Kareem Harden, Phillip Houston. That was basically your offensive line this past year. So they could return most of those guys. Obviously, a couple of them that didn't play as much, like Khalil Benson, entered the transfer portal. You don't have Justin Mayers anymore. But even these guys played quite a bit this past year. So you could be returning 5 guys that have played a lot of football together. And you're also bringing in some more experience as well as some depth. So.
Well, they're going to be beefing up with our friends over at Peckish. They're going to be in the weight room. They're going to be doing their thing. So excited for what the offense, the new look offense is going to look like for the Colorado Buffaloes. Obviously, year 2 for offensive coordinator Pat Shurmur in the saddle. We'll see how creative he can get. New quarterbacks, similar type of dynamic in the running back room, some familiar faces in the wide receiver room, but to Chase's point, continuity on the offensive line. But guys, make sure to hit that like button, smash that subscribe button on the way out. That way you guys never, ever miss an episode of the Sko Show. We're just getting started. 2025 is here, and we are excited to talk all things black and gold right here on the Sko Show. But for Chase Howell, follow him on social at Chase Howell _. I'm at Media by AP. That's going to do it for us. It's Sko Buffs.
Sko Buffs.